All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about one of the most powerful and honestly dangerous processes that can happen inside the human brain, how certain substances can completely hijack your mind's control panel. We're breaking down the science behind the high, the crash, and the vicious cycle that traps millions. It all really starts with this simple question. Why is there such a huge difference between a natural pleasure, something that just makes you feel good, and the overwhelming, all-consuming experience that some drugs can produce? It's like they're from two different planets. And you know what? Neurologically, they basically are. And this chart right here is the reason why. A fantastic meal, a hug from someone you love, that might get you a nice little 200% bump in your brain's baseline dopamine. Feels great, right? But certain drugs? Whoa. They unleash an absolute tidal wave, blasting that level up to 1,000%, sometimes even more. Your brain was just never, ever designed to handle that kind of flow. So to really get how the hijack works, you first have to understand the system that's being hijacked. Your brain has this incredibly sophisticated reward system. Think of it like a survival superhighway that's been built and refined over thousands of years for one single purpose: to keep you and our species alive. And the fuel for this superhighway is a neurotransmitter called dopamine. It's basically your brain's way of saying, hey, that thing you just did, that was good. Do it again. It's what pushes you to eat, to connect with people, to seek out things that ensure you survive. It's a beautifully tuned, life-sustaining machine. Okay, so now let's see what happens when substances stage a full-on hostile takeover of the system. You'll see that different drugs have different tactics, but their end goal is always the same: flood the brain with more dopamine than it's ever experienced, and in doing so, completely rewrite its list of priorities. Okay, check this out, because this is fascinating. A stimulant like cocaine doesn't actually make new dopamine. It's more like a thief. So normally, your neurons have this little vacuum cleaner system to suck up any extra dopamine floating around. Cocaine comes in and just plugs the vacuum. The result? A massive chemical pileup, which creates that intense euphoria. But it also dangerously overclocks your whole nervous system, which is what can lead to a heart attack. Now, opioids are sneakier. They use a quieter, more insidious method. They're like a master key that unlocks your body's natural pain and bliss receptors, and that creates this feeling of just profound, warm comfort. But here's the terrifying trade-off. While it's wrapping you in this euphoric blanket, it's also whispering to the most ancient part of your brain, the brainstem, to just quiet down. And that includes its most fundamental job, the automatic drive to breathe. And this danger has been cranked up to an insane degree with synthetic opioids. I mean, look at this. Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. We are talking about a dose difference so small, you can't even see it being the line between life and death. It's absolutely terrifying. And this leads us to a really critical point, because so much of the danger comes from these common myths people believe. A lot of us operate under the assumption that some substances are okay because they're natural, or maybe they're used for performance. Well, the science tells a very, very different story. Let's just kill the natural equals safe myth right here and down. You know what else is natural? Arsenic, tobacco, rattlesnake venom. Where a substance comes from tells you absolutely nothing about its safety. Potent plants like the opium poppy or modern cannabis have compounds that are more than powerful enough to dangerously hijack your brain chemistry. And yeah, this even applies to substances a lot of people see as low risk. Recent studies are showing that regular use of today's super high-potency cannabis, and yes, that includes edibles, can nearly double your risk of major cardiovascular events like a heart attack or a stroke. It directly messes with receptors in your heart muscle, a fact that most people just completely overlook. And then you've got performance enhancers like anabolic steroids. These don't just mess with your brain, they hijack your body on a genetic level, forcing changes. The side effects are brutal and often permanent. Shrunken testicles and breast growth in men, a deepened voice and facial hair in women. This isn't just a minor issue, it's a devastating long-term trade-off. So how does one use, or a few uses, turn into this compulsive, life-destroying need? Well, it's a predictable neurobiological process, a trap that can catch anyone. It's not a choice, it's the brain being fundamentally rewired against your will. This downward spiral is the perfect way to picture it. You gotta understand, nobody ever plans to get trapped. People start at the top, usually just chasing that initial good feeling. But with every single use, the brain itself changes, it recalibrates, and it pulls them deeper and deeper into the cycle. So here's how it works. After that first massive dopamine flood, the brain freaks out and tries to protect itself. So it literally starts removing its own dopamine receptors. That's called tolerance. And now all the normal joys in life, food, friends, music, they start to feel flat, kind of gray. So now it takes more and more of the drug just to feel okay, which drives you to take more, which quickly leads to dependence, where the body physically needs the substance just to function at all. And if you try to stop, that's when your body goes into open revolt. This is withdrawal. With dopamine levels crashing way below normal, the result is just a storm of anxiety, sickness, and pain. At this stage, the user isn't even chasing a high anymore. They are desperately running from the misery of withdrawal, a feeling so bad it can override everything else. So why is this cycle so uniquely dangerous for teenagers? Well, it's because the adolescent brain is biologically primed for this kind of hijacking. It's a period of massive, unbalanced growth that creates this window of extreme vulnerability. Think about it. The years between 12 and 18 are this bridge from childhood to adulthood, and the brain is navigating a perfect storm of pressures: school stress, social media, peer pressure, and just a natural hardwired curiosity to experiment. It's a crossroads of huge risk and huge opportunity. And this right here explains the biological mismatch perfectly. The limbic system, that's the part of the brain that seeks rewards, pleasure, excitement, is fully developed and firing on all cylinders. That's the gas pedal, and it is floored. But the prefrontal cortex, the part that handles impulse control, weighs long-term consequences, your brakes, that's still under construction until you're about 25. You've got a sports car with no brake. Now, after all of this heavy and frankly scary science, we have to talk about the most important message of all, and it's one of hope. The brain is not permanently broken. It can heal. The very same process, neuroplasticity, that lets addiction take root is what makes recovery possible. The brain can be rewired. And this is why it is so vital that we reframe how we think about this. Addiction is a brain disease. It is not a moral failing. It is not a lack of willpower. It's a chronic, treatable condition defined by compulsive behavior even when it causes devastating harm. And just like any other disease, it requires medical treatment and ongoing care. The path forward really exists on two fronts. Prevention is all about building strong roots, supportive families, early education about the real risks, and finding healthy ways to cope with stress. For those already caught in the cycle, recovery is the path out of that maze, guided by professional help and structured programs that literally help rebuild and rewire the brain's broken pathways. So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? What do we do with all this? It really boils down to a simple three-part call to action. Understand the science of how this brain disease actually works, empathize with the people affected by it because it can truly happen to anyone, and finally act by sharing this knowledge, by fighting this stigma, and by supporting the pathways to both prevention and recovery.